Camping, where you can enjoy the great outdoors, roast marshmallows over a crackling fire, and possibly be devoured by a monster lurking in the woods. But don't let that stop you from packing your tent and heading into the wilderness for some good old-fashioned terror. Here, we have 3 terrifying stories. This is Daily Scary Stories. Like and subscribe for daily content. The Watcher. Sam and Maria had been having an affair for months, and they were both deeply in love. But as their spouses grew more and more suspicious, they knew they had to find a way to be together. They decided to take a camping trip to a remote area deep in the woods, where they could be alone and free from prying eyes. As they set up camp in a secluded clearing, the towering trees provided a natural canopy, and the sound of a nearby stream added to the ambience of romance. The anticipation of being alone together made them both giddy with excitement. Maria's curves captivated Sam, while his toned muscles and strong jawline left Maria breathless. In their tent, they felt as though they were the only 2 people in the world. The sensation of being surrounded by nature and in each other's arms was truly exhilarating and unforgettable. But as the darkness descended, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As the night went on, the feeling of being watched only intensified. They heard strange noises coming from the woods, branches snapping, twigs crunching underfoot. They tried to ignore it, but the noises only grew louder. They knew deep down that something was out there stalking them. In the middle of the night, they were awakened by a loud crash, and they saw a shadowy figure moving through the trees. They tried to leave the campsite, but they found that their cars wouldn't start. They were trapped in the wilderness with the unknown stalker. They huddled together, scared and unsure of what to do. As the days passed, they were plagued by terrifying dreams of the stalker. They saw him in their sleep, watching them from the shadows, his eyes glowing in the darkness. He seemed to be getting closer and closer, and they knew that if they didn't find a way out soon, he would catch them. They searched for a way to repair their cars, but it was no use. The stalker had tampered with them, making it impossible for them to leave. They were at his mercy, and they knew it. As the nights grew colder and the stalker's presence grew stronger, they began to wonder if they would ever make it out alive. Finally, after several days of being lost and stalked, they stumbled upon a ranger station and were rescued. But the memory of the stalker in the woods would stay with them forever. They realized that the price of their love was too high, and they were forced to move on with their lives, forever haunted by the memories of the Watcher in the woods and their forbidden love. They never saw each other again, but they were forever changed by the experience. They knew that they would never be able to forget the terror they had experienced and the love they had shared. Love Triangle. 3 classmates set out for a camping trip, hoping to discover more about each other. John, a curious and inquisitive college student, has always been drawn to the dark and mysterious world of the great outdoors. His classmate, Alice, is a fearless and adventurous soul, always eager to test the limits of her courage and confront the unknown. And then there's Emily, a kind and compassionate spirit, always willing to lend a helping hand, but with a heart full of dark secrets and hidden desires. As the 3 of them set up a camp in a secluded area, surrounded by tall trees and the sound of a nearby stream, John couldn't help but feel a sense of nervous excitement. He was on a camping trip with not 1, but 2 of his classmates, Alice and Emily, both of whom he had a crush on. He couldn't decide who he liked more, and was hoping that this trip would help him figure it out. He felt a deep connection with Emily's kind and adventurous spirit, but he couldn't help but admire Alice's striking beauty and confidence. He found himself constantly caught between the 2, constantly questioning which of them he wanted to be with. As they explored the area and shared stories about the campfire, John couldn't help but feel his heart flutter every time one of them would laugh or touch his arm. He knew this trip would be a turning point in his life, and he couldn't wait to see what the future held for him and his romantic prospects. As they explored the area, they stumbled upon an ancient burial ground. They were fascinated by the strange artifacts they found, and Emily couldn't resist taking a few of them back to camp. But as they settled in for the night, they began to experience strange occurrences. John started having nightmares about the spirits of the dead, who were angry and vengeful. Emily was plagued by strange visions and whispers in her ear, while Alice couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. They knew something was wrong, but they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. As the days passed, the occurrences became more frequent and more intense. They were all plagued by terrifying nightmares and strange visions. They knew they had to put the spirits to rest, but they didn't know how. Alice convinced John that it was Emily's fault for taking items from the burial ground, and so they decided to leave her behind in the forest. They left her there alone and terrified as they made their escape. John and Alice managed to find safety, but Emily was never seen again. The experience forever changed John as he realized the true cost of his indecision and selfishness. He was haunted by the memory of what happened to Emily, and he knew that he would never be able to forget the terror and guilt he felt. His love triangle with Alice and Emily had ended in tragedy, and it was a bitter reminder of the power and consequences of desire. The cabin in the woods. The group of friends, Jack, Sarah, Tom, Lisa, and Alex, had been planning this camping trip for months. They had all graduated college together and wanted to relive the good old days. Jack, the leader of the group, had rented a remote cabin deep in the woods, promising an adventure of a lifetime. As they arrived at the cabin, they were greeted by a scene of pure horror. The windows were shattered. The front door was hanging off its hinges, and the inside of the cabin was covered in strange symbols. Despite their initial reservations, they decided to set up camp for the night. That night, as they settled in for sleep, strange noises woke them up. Scratching and whispering came from outside the cabin, sending shivers down their spine. Jack and Tom, the bravest of the group, decided to investigate, but found nothing. The noises continued, growing louder and more frequent as the night went on. The next day, they found the symbols etched into the walls of the cabin. They didn't know what they meant, but it made them feel uneasy. They decided to leave the cabin and set up camp elsewhere. But as they were packing up, the scratching and whispering returned. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared in the woods, sending them into a panicked frenzy. They quickly packed up and ran towards their car, but as they were leaving, the figure appeared again, standing in front of the car. They couldn't make up who or what it was, but it was enough to make them change their minds and set up camp again, far from the cabin. As the night went on, the friends started to disappear, one by one. Jack, Sarah, and Tom went to check on the car and never came back. Lisa and Alex stayed back at the campsite, but when morning came, they were gone too. They were never found, and their fate remains a mystery. The cabin in the woods still stands, abandoned and eerie. Some say that the spirits of the friends who disappeared still linger there, trapped by the strange symbols etched into the walls. To this day, no one dares to stay in the cabin overnight. Many say that the cabin is cursed, that the spirits of the friends who disappeared still haunt it, waiting for their next unsuspecting victims. But no one knows for sure. The truth may be buried deep in the woods forever.